20 past. I'll let him introduce himself and all the best. Close off.
Hi everyone, I'm Aaron. I'm from UJ. I'm a Microsoft Operating System Administrator. I am not a security specialist, right? So I don't know how many of you look after servers and receive emails from your security team saying, hey, there's a bunch of vulnerabilities on this bunch of servers, fix it by this date, right? And then you're left like, how, where, etc. So I'm just going to go into a couple of the problems that we've experienced in our Windows space at UJ and the free ways of actually fixing the issues when they do arise. We're going to go through some of the internal scans or pen tests, if you want to call them that, and then just some of the specific stuff that came up in some of our scans, like this guy, a couple of the Cypher stuff, remote desktop certificates, weak protocols, and your SSL certificate issues. Just to start off with, we use a system called OpenVAS. A lot of you may or may not be familiar with it, but it does do enough for us to be able to kind of scan our systems before the auditors get there and give us hell about them. Look, we can assess computer systems, network devices, applications. We're looking at about over 400 systems. We scan these at least once a week. And this is just to be proactive, avoid security issues and major audit findings. We all love auditors, I'm sure, right? Yeah, okay. This is the architecture of what we use. The guys at Kipu will explain Greenbone, and we are using a free edition. The guys at Kipu will be able to give you details about the differences between the free edition and the enterprise one that they're using. The main thing is you get a whole bunch, thousands and thousands of lines of configurations or result configs, right? So what we've had to do is get a guy, one of our script masters, as I call him, to turn it into something like this, right? As you can see, we'll track our progress there. That just shows you the high severity and medium, etc. And as you go along, one is able to just track how far along we are, etc., especially the managers, right? So for each individual administrator, you'd get something like this on a spreadsheet, your IP there, your host names over there, and a brief description of the possible vulnerability on your system. For me, the main thing is, or was, what does this all mean? And what do I do with it? So we'd receive a spreadsheet like this, and an HTML formatted file, which gives you certain details. Now, this name is quite appropriate, because this guy gave me quite some hell in figuring out what it all means and how to fix it, right? So you can see that this exists on 3389, which is your remote desktop port. But this meant nothing to me. I'm like, workaround? I don't know if you guys can tell me how to deploy whatever they're talking about here, but I couldn't figure that one out. So the best way to tackle any of these things, and you'll see that a little later, is in the Windows registry. I'm just going to play this quick demo for you all. All right, so you open your registry. You go to the necessary Hive, which you'll see here. And look, S-channel is basically where you're going to live when it comes to your disabling of weak ciphers, protocols, etc. What you're going to want to do is make sure you get a backup of it before making any registry changes. I think if we've dealt with Windows servers, we all know how messing up the registry can mess your system up completely. All right, so that's just exporting the registry file so that we have a backup. Then you just create a new key, call it exactly as it is, Diffie-Hellman, a new D word, enabled with a value of 0, right? The value of 0 basically states that it is disabled. You reboot your server, make sure everything's working, and you can go on. Now that's a key exchange algorithm that was found to be vulnerable. So instead of trying to fix it, we just disabled it with the hope that nothing was going to break, and nothing did. So we carried on, right? Another thing you'll get, weak ciphers. Here's an example of a weak cipher. You'll see a few others a little bit later, but at least they tell you the name of the cipher suite. You should change your service so that it no longer supports that cipher suite. So if your service is running IIS, for example, you can use the registry once again to disable the cipher suite. And here's just another quick one. The only reason I'm playing another video is to express how important it is to actually, first you gotta make sure you remove the old backup file. Your system's now working, you don't need it anymore. And you're gonna now back up the new, or the registry's new state, rather. Right? We back it up again, and the rest is pretty straightforward and similar to what you saw previously. Let me skip forward here. Okay. So another new key. It's got to be spelled out properly. And a new DWORD enabled with a value of 0. Some of the other weak ciphers, some of you may have seen, are those RC4 cipher suites. I know some people may be thinking, yes, but Microsoft will patch it, etc. The thing is, I don't like to wait for them to patch these things, so I prefer to do it manually. Things to consider, always ensure you can roll back in case anything breaks after making a registry change. And if it's third-party services where the vulnerability exists, let them fix it, because if you break it, you might lose support for the application, etc. Best let them do it. We all know about ransomware, and this is now the WannaCry ransomware. We were lucky that because we do these regular scans, we picked up this vulnerability before WannaCry even became a big thing, which was awesome because we had already started working on the solution. And once again, you're living in the registry. The Hive is slightly different. However, this stuff will be available if anybody is already having this problem. There's just the Hive for interest's sake. You can script these things. I just prefer to show you guys the graphical way for those who are not comfortable messing around in the registry, etc. But if you don't have time to do that, you can script it. The script will look something like that. Here's a bunch of different scripts that we've got for stuff that we disabled on the systems. And this is just the commands, what they look like to get that script working. I don't know, we had quite some hell with remote desktop certificates in that when we were audited, we found that all the remote desktop certificates that live on that port 3389 there were found to be insecure because the signature algorithm was that SHA-1, or the key size was 1024 instead of 2048. And our security team tells us there's no such thing as a certificate with SHA-1 anymore. It's got to be SHA-256 and above, and the key size has to be 2048 bits. So our solution to this, and it's quite detailed, so you guys can go and look at that up there, but basically we're using AD certificate services, creating a custom template and deploying it through a GPO. Problem is, once they get that certificate, you still have to point remote desktop services to the new certificate. Otherwise, it just uses its default certificate. So I just thought I'd show you guys quickly how that's done. Blank. Ah, okay. Sorry, I would skip through to the end. I'm just not seeing how, yeah? Right, so this is assuming you've already deployed the group policy, and you now want to just request a certificate. You load the MMC and the certificate snap-in, go into your personal store, and your certificate will be there. Basically, what you want is that thumbprint value right, which is a bunch of digits, etc. You're going to take it. I use Notepad just to make sure I get the command right first. And once again, I'm sorry about this. Can't see a way to speed it up for you. So you're just going to remove all the spaces that are between those values. Then you're going to copy the command into PowerShell, run it, restart your remote desktop services, and you're good to go. You scan your machine again, and you'll see that the vulnerability no longer appears. Just one thing to look out for, there's a little funny character there that you've got to get rid of, or you will get an error. And that's it. Next, another thing we had problems with is complaints about SSL certificates. Once again, well, either, I think in this case it's expired, but it could also be your key size, it could also be your hashing algorithm that are giving you problems. However, the main thing I wanted to focus on is this, I call it the Chrome moan. So what happened was, thank you. What happened was, we got a vulnerability on a specific site, and we requested a new certificate, implemented the new certificate, then got calls from users saying, but the site is still not secure. You told me it's secure, but it's not secure. Reason for this was version 58 and future versions of Chrome now require that one specify a subject alternative name when you're doing a certificate signing request, and it's very picky about the attributes you must use. I thought it important to mention because you never know, other browsers may start doing this as well, and you're going to get a lot of complaints from your users. There's a bunch of different steps. I don't think we're going to have time to go through all of them, but I'll just quickly take you through it. Right? So this is once again in that snap-in on MMC for certificates. You're going to go proceed without the enrollment policy. And let's just get to the part where, all right, I'm not sure how many guys do this, but it's good practice to put an asterisk in front of your friendly name. This comes in very handy when you need to do your certificate bindings at a later stage. This part here is the part that Chrome is moaning about. And basically, they want all this stuff to be included in your certificate signing request. Now, prior to this, we had never done it this way. So it was a bit of a headache figuring all this out. But be sure you put all the normal stuff in your subject name. And then you've got to include your DNS, IPv4 address, a URL, and the user principal name, which should be an email address. Right, also important, once again, must be SHA-256, 2048, and make your private key exportable. You save this as a text file, then you send it either to your internal certificate administrator or an external service provider if you're buying it from outside and it's an externally accessible application or service, right? And Chrome no longer moans, basically. I'm done. Any questions from anybody? You? Yes? No? None? So you guys all secure then? Have you guys never seen this? No? No Windows people here? You've seen it at least. All right. Biggest? You did fix it. That's it. Okay. Well, look, this stuff will be available for anybody who you'd like to share it with on As Audit's website. Other than that, thanks for your time and thanks for listening. Cheers.
Thanks, Aaron. Hello. Thank you very much, Aaron. May I call upon the next presenter, please? No, it's fine. May I call upon the next presenter just to set up and
Is it fine? Okay.
Thank you, colleagues, for joining us in this particular stream. Let's welcome to the podium Mr. Winston Mphahlele. Let's please welcome him, please. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping that you guys are enjoying your day. Today I want to be discussing with you one of the projects or milestones that we achieved at the Valley University of Technology. And the project itself is configuration management using Ansible. So yeah, I'm going to be talking to you today. So our journey at the Valley University, we're coming a long way from the manual way of doing things. So we normally used to set up our servers using the command line. So basically what happens is we'll request the server from the ops guys. Once the server is being provisioned, one of the admins has to go through the server and configure it for it to meet the minimum specs in regard to database configurations, your web server applications, and all those kind of things. This was a very tedious process for us. It's really a pain in the neck if you really get to think of it, and it was consuming all the time, which our administrators could be focusing on more productive things as such. And besides from the tedious process itself, it's really, should I say, it can really be having problems in terms of human mistakes and all those kind of things. So once someone misconfigures this and puts it to a specific server, it's really a pain for you to reconfigure it again. So another thing is we are having different environments as well. We are having in-house applications which are developed within the VUT itself, and these applications require different setups as well. And besides that, we're having our own LMSs and you're having your LMS such as Sakai, your Moodles, and all those kind of things. So currently we're sitting on 2 LMS systems, and they require different configurations. And once you want to do an upgrade or you want to change something on the server as well, you still have to go manually through all the servers and make all those kind of configurations. So this is really a journey where we're coming from. So configuration management, what is it actually? Configuration management for me is really a process that ensures correct settings and rules assigned to a specific configuration item, which consists of the following. It could be a software, it could be a hardware, it could be a service, or it could be users as the way they are configured for you to interact with them as well. It actually ensures the current design and the build state of the system is known since you're having those as configured. What does it really mean not to have configuration management within your infrastructure? First of all, it means figure it out for yourself. This actually means that you need to figure out which softwares, which services, which do you really need to configure or do you really need to change. It means redoing implementation. Think of having your infrastructure, you're having your web servers. Let's say you're having 2 web servers which are sharing a load. It means each and every web server you have to go there and redo the same thing which you actually did on the other one. Losing productivity. So since it takes time for you to configure these things and you're repeating yourself, you're actually losing productivity from the staff point of view. And at the end, you might even end up modifying wrong things. So you might not know which services or which packages do you really need to modify on your server. Yeah, having that being said with configuration management, let's dive into Ansible. So Ansible is actually an engine which provisions for cloud computing. It also supports application deployment, configuration management, of which is what we'll be talking about today. And Ansible itself is actually a solution for configuration management, since it's designed to be minimal in terms of configuration. It's consistent enough. So once you got your configuration items set up correctly, you could just use that and avoid the human mistakes. It's a secure way of actually configuring all your infrastructure, your servers on the infrastructure, and it's highly reliable. And besides all the points, it's really easy for you to learn and use. So why Ansible? One of the key things I think one of my colleagues was talking about today is planning for automation. One of the reasons for us to use Ansible is we really want to automate things, and since I mentioned our journey of way of doing things, it was really manual. So Ansible actually provides us with a way of automating things. We want to increase our stability on our infrastructure, and also have more control on what's happening on our infrastructure. And we also want to comply with certain policies which we have within the IT department, and procedures as well. So since you do that on your configuration management, then you have a specific standard way of configuring your server on an infrastructure. And it really cut the cost. This is by having a detailed knowledge of your configuration settings. It actually can cut cost, since your IT department doesn't have to really spend too much money into hiring a third-party company to come and do all the configurations on your infrastructure. So once you configure one server, you really know what you can do. You can scale it to all other servers on your infrastructure. But of course, you have to test before going to production. It actually provides a way for us to, detect improper configurations, and also a quicker way of replacing or modifying those configurations. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's a faster problem. As I mentioned, that you can restore your services quickly and replace the improper one. It's actually, that's a faster way of resolving problems as well. And yeah, faster service restoration. So if we're having a database cluster and one of our databases is failing, we could actually easily replace that database and just push the configurations which were on the same database, and within minutes your database is up and running. So this actually restores your services much quicker. And it's more efficient for change management. I believe most universities are already into change management, and that's one of the projects we're also working on, change management. So if one has to talk about Ansible and configuration management, one of the things that come into mind is playbooks. So what are actually playbooks? Playbooks are actually an entry point for Ansible. Playbooks are actually, it's pretty much the same way as where you write your commands lines on your Linux machine, or basically, so you write your commands within the playbook and you send it all to your servers, and those commands will be executed. And this is yet another markup language. That's how it's basically written, and it's using data serialization, which is converting data from different data source into another data source, which is preferable. So let's say, for example, you are having a playbook and you really want to push it into your infrastructure. So what I'm having here on my left, I'm having an application server running, and down there in the middle I have two applications, and you wanna, two servers. You wanna downgrade one. You want to downgrade or upgrade a service basically there, and you want to switch from this side. You want to switch your configurations into this side as well. So through a playbook, you can actually do the command, and what you're just gonna do after you wrote the command, you can actually push configurations from one server to another server as well. And I'm going to step into, since I'm talking about playbooks, one could be concerned that how are you actually writing these playbooks? Are you sending specific commands to a specific server each and every time? So Ansible actually has what you call server grouping. So what you basically do, you look into your servers and check what characteristics do they really share in common. So through that you can actually group your servers. On this side we have web servers, so this will be your Apaches, your Tomcats, and all those kind of web servers. And you're having your DB servers there. There will be like your Oracle, or your MySQL, or whichever database that you'll be using. Right? So on this side, I'm having a simple playbook script. So this is just to show that you can actually move, let's say you want to copy a file to a specific group of servers. So you could just specify that through Ansible and say, I want to run this script and I'm going to run to this categorized servers. This a script for a specific group. So let's say you want to install a web server on all your web server groups. So this is Nginx. So let's say you're having 5 or 10 servers that you need to install the web server, depending on your scalability and your environment, if you really want to accommodate load and all these kind of things. So you only want to duplicate yourself or repeat all these kind of things throughout all the servers. So within the playbook itself, you can actually, if you can see at the top there, you're specifying a specific host where you're actually going to run the command. And you could do this your naming and the commands that you're going to run, and you can actually even start services from there. I'm just going to move quickly. This is another script. As you can see, the only difference here I just made is to show that you can even actually move it to all the different servers that you're having. So instead of pushing to a specific group, you could actually push to all your servers on the infrastructure. So what are the good practices? Sorry. So what are the good practices when using configuration management in Ansible? So it's very important for you to group your servers. Use playbooks, of course. It's important for you to name your tasks, since you'll be working with a team of administrators or whoever. So name your tasks so that everyone knows what you're actually doing. Comment your scripts so that it's easy for the next person to adapt and use. Keep it simple. So don't do things in a sophisticated way and say, no, I'm the guy, so they get rid of me, no one is going to be able to carry on with the work. And always do version control. So this is important for you to actually, at the end of the day, you can be able to reverse and see what is it that you configured initially on version 1, version 2, and so forth. Be dynamic, use variables. So your script should be good enough so in such a way that if you want to use it for something else, it should be just few changes on it. Right? So what are the benefits of using configuration management or Ansible as such? For us, this is what we really noticed. Increased staff productivity. What this actually means is that our staff, since they don't spend all those hours on configuring 10 servers, which is going to take them 40 hours or so forth, 2 days or so, they can actually just use configuration management or Ansible, and they could spend all the time. Hopefully, they're only using the time on Netflix or Showmax. Increased user productivity. So since it's easy for you to restore a service, this also means that all your clients which are using that particular service, they don't have to have downtime for a longer period. So their productivity is actually more improved. And this actually reduces the IT cost, since you don't really have to hire all the, like I mentioned earlier, your third-party companies to come and do all those configurations every now and then. They also charge you for consultation, all those kind of fees, you know. So what is it that we really learned at VOT or VUT? Visioning was really important. There were times where you really didn't know what was the first vision and what is it that we really trying to do. So all the scripts now are being visioned. They're attribute-based, so we can actually pass attributes. They're change-oriented, meaning that we can actually change things easily. This is very important. Plan when to release new changes. So you really need to go through your quality assurance and see that all the configurations are going to work when you move to production. That's very important. And that's just about it. Just remember that the failure is actually a stepping stone to success. I can take questions for now. And if you have any other questions later, you can still email me at VT. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Glenn. My question goes around how Ansible is paired with other tools in your environment. Or are you guys using Ansible as a standalone for whatever you need it? Are you stringing it together with other tools, or are you using it on its own, basically?
Well, so far at VT, we actually using an Ansible as a standalone tool for configuration. So we're not using any other tools besides Ansible for our configurations. Yep.
Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, in the absence of questions, thank you, Winston. I know we will have another 5 minutes break and we will soldier on, right?
Yeah, I'm actually just going to proceed with another project that we really worked on, and it's RCS lock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just 5 more minutes, colleagues, so that we can allow the other colleagues to come through as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
This thing is not really working for me. Is it battery or is this thing? I think it was close to.
Yeah, it was
close.
I think I'll use this.
You'll have.
Yeah, I'll be fine with this one.
Colder.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, can use this. It's going to be just too much.
Yeah.
You'll be holding this and.
No, this is a.
No. This is something. No.
Thing already.
That one I'm not even going to point. It's just to move from this side.
You know. Okay, colleagues, let's welcome back Winston again. This is the last session of the day. I'm sure your throats and your stomachs are getting ready for the meat. Are we vegetarians? Any vegetarians? Is it already? Now let's get ready. Do we have our dancing shoes? Dancing shoes, is it? Okay. Okay, over to you, Mr. Winston.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. For those who were not here, my name is Winston. I'm from Valley University of Technology, and I'm working at the IT department. I know it's the last session of the day, and you guys really looking forward to go and having some rest. But before that, we're just gonna look into centralized logging using RSS log. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to look into logs, ordinary logs and all those kind of things. I'm just going to go through the slide quickly. Centralized logging, RSS log, both our client and central servers. And we're going to look into log analyzer, which is the front end for RSS log. And I'm going to be taking questions at the end. Okay. So, what are logs? I believe most of you today, when you came in or yesterday, you went through some register there and you signed that you are here and all those kind of things. So for me, logs are a list of activities that were performed, and basically it's a history book. So we can go there for referencing and see what really happened. And in IT or in computing, logs have a standard format, and I believe that is not only in IT, but even in security and all those kind of things. But in computing, I would say the standard which you're using is the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. And logs can be distinct, such as your access logs, your error logs, and your server logs. And if I may ask, how many of you guys are really monitoring your logs on your infrastructure? Close to none. So you guys really have to look into that as well. And logs, for security reasons, they're not accessed by normal users. Yeah. So as I mentioned, you guys, you really signed in at the gate. So even in computers, everything that is actually happening within the server is being logged. Okay, this is just a sample of access logs. So if you're having any web application or websites or whatever, and you really want to see what's happening on it, access logs are one of the things to look into. And for your server, if your servers might be throwing you warnings and all those kind of things before it crashing, besides you have guys having alerts and all those kind of things, but error logs as well are very important. So, what are normal logs or standalone logs on the infrastructure or on your servers? So basically, each and every server generates its own logs. So for that we know, and even though you do your containers, I think the Microsoft guys, they're also talking about containers using Docker and all those kind of things. Those containers actually generate their own logs. And at times, it can really be difficult for you to access these logs and also to manage them, especially where you're going to you scale your servers and start to have so many servers to manage. And after all, we really don't know, if you are not managing your logs, you really don't have the entire view or the insights of your infrastructure. You don't really know what's happening. So for who knows, someone might be trying to pick on your servers and you really don't know. So we're just looking everywhere. Okay, this an example of an infrastructure. One of you guys might be having this at the institute. So what's happening is you're having your high availability at the top. After that, you might be having your web servers, your Apache, your JBoss, your Glassfish, and you might be having another high availability for your database just before your database there. And at the database, you might be having a cluster as well. So depending on how you set up your infrastructure or your environment, this environment itself, it might be having problems, and you wanna look into what's happening. Let's say, for example, one of the service running on Apache is not responding, and you wanna look into that. So your HA might be generating logs for you to help you. Your Apache might be generating logs. Your database might be generating logs. And if you're not really monitoring those logs, you wouldn't know what's really happening or where the problem is. Yes, having that been said, we're gonna look into centralized logging, of which is the topic for today. Centralized logging is could be defined as a consolidation of all log data, and these log data will gonna be pushed to one central location. So let's have a picture view of that. I believe most of you guys are having ITS. You're having your Oracle, you're having your LMS, of which might be Sakai, Blackboard, Moodle, whatever, whichever that you're using. So there are logs generated from the server here on your ITS. There are logs generated from your Oracle database. There are logs generated from your LMS as well. So all these logs are being collected and they'll be pushed to one central point for you to manage. So why logging? Why do we want to keep logs? Logs are really important, and they also give us real-time data of all our servers. So real-time, you get to know what's happening at what server. You get to know where is it busy, where is the CPU going high, and all those kind of things. Besides monitoring and just seeing a graph and getting an alert that the CPU is high, you can get into your logs and see why is it really high. You get real-time querying and analytics, so you can do your dashboarding and all those kind of things based on your log analyzer, of which I'm gonna also show you at the end. So you can do your queries. The good thing about this real-time querying is that RSSLog itself actually supports MySQL or PostgreSQL and Oracle, so you can actually push your logs into a database and you can start to write queries from your database as well and query them. And you actually just need a visualized representation of your data. So RSSLog is a utility for provision support for logging, as well as also known as a Rocket Fast system logging. It can provision about 1 million log messages per second. And it supports both local and remote logging. It's fully, you can actually configure your log messages or the output of your messages into the standard which you want. And it supports multi-threading. And just like the security guard, he will have his book and will have the dates and times on what's really happening. Your RSS log also needs some specific things. At least, at minimal, it needs to know what host or what server IP address am I working with. It needs to have your date timestamp, which process, which program is it really running, or which program is it really logging. Also the criticality, how important is it, severity. And after all, the message itself for details. Okay, using RSS log, this is what you might need, or this is what you should at least have. You need at least one central log server. You need client logs. These are your host, as I mentioned earlier, your web applications servers and your database servers. You need a database itself where you're going to store the logs if you want to perform your querying and analytics. And you need to filter some parts of your log messages. So at times you don't want to be monitoring everything that's happening on your network or on your servers. You just want to monitor specific parts of your infrastructure. Let's say, for example, you're only concerned with security. So you might be monitoring people who are trying to log into your network using SSH or randomized passwords and all those kind of things. And a front end if you really need a visualized representation of data. So client and central servers. On the client side, we just need to configure it to push all those logs messages to the central server. It's better for you to actually filter the logs from the client side so that you lower the processing on the central server. On the central server, you need to enable either TCP or UDP, since RSS log supports both protocols. Set up your database. That can be Postgre, can be your MySQL. And the front end, that's your log analyzer or whichever front end that you choose to use. Okay, as root, we're using log analyzer. So if you configure log analyzer, this is what you'll see. I'm just gonna shift a bit here, and so this is like your landing page when after logging into log analyzer. Let's just step into it a bit. So since you're having multiple sources of data, you can actually configure on log analyzer different sources of data depending on the types of logs as well. So you select your sources and all those kind of things from your log analyzer, and after that, this kind of logs that you see. So facility as well there, security threats, mail threats, and I believe people are still running cron jobs. So as well as us, we're still having some cron jobs at some point. So crons as well. So that's the facility. You get to know the severity, whether it's just normal notification, is it a warning, is it an error, what is it? The host itself, you get to know which server is it as well. The date time, and at the end there you get the message of the log. Okay, centralized logging with RSS log. This actually the benefits of using it. You have one central place for troubleshooting. So if your infrastructure is having problems, you could just go into your central log and look in and troubleshoot from there. You don't have to be logging into the servers and seeing what's happening. You can just go to your RSS log server and check there. Centralized auditing. So you guys Some I heard that you guys actually like auditors. We don't, but have one central place for them to audit. You can set up alerts from the RSS log. So let's say, for example, you're logging specific attempts for people trying to log into your infrastructure. You can actually, from RSS log itself, forward the email to a specific person or a specific group of people. And you become to work smart, not hard. You determine your trends, your patterns, what's really happening. You have more insight of your infrastructure than before. And like I said, yeah, improved infrastructure insights. And after all, you get improved security, since you get to know what people are interested in within your infrastructure. So you might be looking into the logs and also improving your security based on the attempts that were made on your infrastructure. So this is what we learned from Valley University of Technology in terms of RSS log. Identify your critical servers and your services. You wouldn't just start with all the servers at the same time, so it's better for you to have a better vision of it and see if it's really working for you guys. Even as for us, we started with few servers, and we went with the project gradually adding more servers to it. And also the services that we are running. Determine what services are important. If ITS is important to you, you might as well just start with those kind of services. You can look into the important logs. For us, our error logs and our access logs, that's the important part of us. We are really interested in who's accessing our infrastructure and why they're doing. Are we having any errors on our servers? Are we having any warnings from our servers? Filter your logs. Filter your logs from your client side instead of filtering them from the host, the central server, because it means less processing on your central server. Select the best protocols suitable for your infrastructure. For us, we chose TCP over UDP. The reason being the TCP actually acknowledges the packets that we actually getting. So that's one of the good reasons we chose it. And if possible, guys, should you decide to use RSS log, use IP addresses instead of DNS names. So the reason being that your DNS, at times, it might take time for you to resolve. Let's say you're having a problem on your network and your DNS is taking time to resolve the name, and the server is actually having a problem, and you're using RSS log, you won't be getting those messages because of the DNS. Configure a front end if you want to use your visualized data, and use configuration management, as I mentioned, configuration management earlier, using Ansible. So that's what we use to push all the configurations. And what's the future of looking at Valley University of Technology? Even though we are using RSS log, we also considering other logging services such as Greylog 2 and ELK. That's one of the things we're looking into. And that's basically it. Failure is a stepping stone to success, guys. And I can take questions for now, and if you're having other questions at a later stage, you can still forward them to my email address. Thank you. Yes?
Just one, I promise. I haven't had much experience with RSS log, so if you do have a break between your client and your logging server,
Yes.
Is there a catch-up, or is there just kind of a hole in the log reporting?
Well, what's going to happen is on your log reporting side, you wouldn't be able to pick it up if you're having you're talking about a communication breakdown between the client and the central log. Yes, but then we're using configuration management, as I mentioned earlier, for all these kind of things. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
I thought we were on the same page until the last part where you said we use configuration management for these type of things.
Yeah, that's, remember when you're having communication breakdown between your client and your server, you will pick it up from your central log server. You're having all the servers which are reporting at the same time. The only thing which you could do is to forward your message to, remember on the client side, you can actually set a template to say, this kind of message they should be forwarded to all these kind of groups. So should communication break down, that means it's actually a network problem, am I right? Yes, so all those kind of messages from the client itself, you won't be able to get them on the central server, all those kind of messages, but once your network resumes, those messages, they actually gonna be forwarded to do all those kind of emails. But from the central log server itself, you won't be able to pick all those messages. Yep.
Okay, my question is on, does RSS Log provide you with a platform to build intelligence on top of your normal logs?
What it does is it supports front end, of which it allows you to actually push your, before the front end, sorry, you push your log messages to a database, and from the database itself, you can do your analytics from there. And your analytics, you can actually use a front end, which I talked about, Log Analyzer. You can draw your graphs and all those kind of things. But if you want to use the data in another different BI, you can actually export it there. Any other questions?
In the absence of questions, then, colleagues, let's thank Mr. Winston Mphahlele. Again, you are a real soldier, bro.
Thank you.
Back-to-back presentations. Now, just a few housekeeping rules. As I alluded earlier, we are putting on our dancing shoes and all, and there's a big announcement because there's a tag basically that you need to get.